For over 2 years, the world has watched a conflict that has redefined modern warfare and global geopolitics. The cost has been immense. Beneath the headlines, a deeper reality is emerging. A war of attrition that is exhausting both resources and human lives at an unprecedented rate. A look at the current front lines reveals a jagged wound across eastern Ukraine, where movements are now measured in meters rather than miles. The statistics are chilling. Conservative estimates suggest over 30,000 soldiers have been killed or wounded in just the last 60 days of fighting. This leads us to a critical question. How does a conflict of this scale actually end? Today, we explore the scenario of Russian military exhaustion. The Russian military, often viewed as an inexhaustible giant, is showing signs of severe structural strain after months of high-intensity combat operations. Maintaining a modern tank fleet requires more than just fuel. It requires sophisticated parts that are increasingly difficult to source under international sanctions. Factories are struggling. While production continues, the pace cannot keep up with the losses on the front, forcing a reliance on refurbished older models. Blueprints of modern T-90 tanks are overlaid on images of scrapyards, illustrating the years of industrial effort required to replace current losses. Beyond machinery, there is the human element. Morale among frontline troops is a growing concern as the war enters another grueling phase. Soldiers rest in damp bunkers, using outdated equipment that dates back decades, highlighting the disparity between propaganda and the reality on the ground. If military exhaustion reaches a breaking point, we may witness what experts call the silent conclusion, a halt in offensives without a formal peace. Imagine the artillery fading into a haunting silence. The active front transforms into a heavily fortified line of control, much like a frozen conflict. In this scenario, Vladimir Putin might stand at a grand podium in Moscow, declaring a special operation success despite the restricted gains. The victory would be defined by the occupation of the Donbass, Mariupol, and the land bridge to Crimea, a fraction of the original invasion goals. This silent end transitions the struggle from a kinetic war to a systematic process of Russification. In the newly occupied territories. In local markets, the Ukrainian hryvnia is being systematically replaced by the Russian ruble, altering the very fabric of daily commerce. Administrative shifts are equally profound. Elderly residents are seen receiving Russian pension documents, tying their financial survival to the new regime. Even the landscape is changing. Workers on ladders remove Ukrainian street signs, replacing them with Russian versions to solidify the new identity. This creates a new border, a heavily fortified and stagnant atmosphere that could last for generations, dividing families and cultures. The Dnieper River, once a symbol of unity, may become a permanent psychological and physical barrier in this frozen conflict. The long-term implications for European security are profound. A semi-permanent state of tension will likely dictate global defense spending for decades. As the smoke clears, we are left with an uncertain future. The war may stop, but the scars on the global order will remain. The conflict in Ukraine has reached a critical juncture, where the lines between regional defense and global escalation are beginning to blur dangerously. In the corridors of power from Washington to Brussels, the atmosphere is heavy with the weight of decisions that could reshape the 21st century. Behind the diplomatic talk, the machinery of war is accelerating. Logistics hubs are working around the clock to sustain an unprecedented flow of equipment. Industrial defense lines are operating at full capacity, turning raw materials into the tools of modern high-intensity warfare. We are witnessing the emergence of the arsenal of democracy, a massive mobilization of Western military hardware destined for the front. Advanced missile systems and long-range precision tools are moving across borders, narrowing the gap between Ukrainian defense and Western capability. The sky above is changing too, with F-16 fighter jets symbolizing a new tier of support that was once considered a distant possibility. But technology alone is not enough. Ukrainian soldiers are currently undergoing intensive training in specialized Western facilities. They are learning to master high-tech digital interfaces, transforming from traditional infantry into operators of a data-driven battlefield. The contrast is stark. On one side, the aging relics of the Soviet era. On the other, the surgical precision of modern Western systems. This technological infusion has created a strategic dilemma for Russia, as their conventional military advantages begin to erode. Precision strikes are now reaching deep behind the lines, targeting critical infrastructure and crippling logistical nodes with pinpoint accuracy. Satellite imagery reveals a somber reality. Russian defensive lines, once thought impenetrable, are now under immense and sustained pressure. As conventional options dwindle, the Kremlin faces a choice between tactical retreat or a dangerous escalation into the unknown. This brings us to the ultimate red line, the potential use of weapons of mass destruction to freeze the conflict. The crossing of this red line would signify a point of no return, moving the world away from conventional war toward global catastrophe. In this high-stakes scenario, the symbolism of a countdown is no longer confined to fiction. The risks are becoming tangible. Should escalation occur, NATO's mobilization would be swift. Forces across Eastern Europe are already in a state of high alert. In the North Atlantic, aircraft carriers represent the massive reach of Western naval power, prepared for any contingency. Cyber command centers are the invisible front lines, where the battle for information and infrastructure is fought every second. The flashpoints are numerous. A direct NATO-Russia confrontation would span continents, from the Baltics to the Pacific. We are left with a precarious peace. The pursuit of technical superiority must be balanced against the terrifying potential for escalation. As the world watches, the fragility of the international order has never been more apparent. The future hangs in a delicate balance. And finally, we will explore the worst remaining scenarios that could unfold in a Russia-Ukraine war. The landscape has changed. From vibrant fields to scarred ruins, a heavy forced silence now hangs over the land as we consider a total surrender. In this scenario, a campaign of terror begins. Desolate cityscapes are placed under heavy surveillance, with cameras watching every street corner and citizen. The political heart of the nation shifts. A pro-Kremlin leader is installed in Kyiv, and the flags that once represented independence are slowly lowered. This vision looks toward a re-established Soviet influence, visualizing a vastly expanded territory where old borders are erased to make room for a new union. The consequences ripple outward. Maps show Russian troop movements shifting toward Moldova and the sensitive borders of the Baltic states, Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania. We enter an era of Cold War 2.0. Iron borders rise again, reinforced by cutting-edge satellite technology and a palpable sense of global dread. But perhaps the greatest threat is the erosion of alliances. What happens if NATO itself begins to disintegrate under the pressure? Inside diplomatic halls, heated debates break out. Divisions deepen as the unified front of the West starts to crumble into internal bickering. A test incursion follows. Under the cover of a moonless night, specialized units cross a Baltic border, searching for a response that never comes. Inside command centers, lights flicker. Disagreement over Article 5 activation leads to a paralyzing silence, signaling the end of collective defense. The global map shifts. Power centers move, and the world enters an uncertain future where the old rules no longer apply. These scenarios are hypothetical, but they remind us of the fragile nature of peace. The future remains unwritten, but the shadows are growing. Like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on many interesting and useful videos. Thank you for watching.